Okay, let's do switches. So a switch is, and there's all sorts of different ones, and they all work the same. I like, actually, yeah, we'll do an int switch. Okay, so let's just do, let's do a get mouse button down. That can execute this whole thing. And that'll be like a start logic. All right, so I'm just gonna drag it over. We're gonna start logic. So what we're gonna do is, let's do a random int. Maybe, 0 to 5, right? So this is our selected random int. That's what that is. Now with that int, what do we want to do to it? Let's run a switch, an int switch. Now like I said, all switches run the same. They're the same idea. It's just whether they use integers, floats, enums, or strings, whatever, right? So a switch, you got to think of a switch as, if you have a piece of logic right here, yeah, so you get a piece of logic following this path, right, and it's doing stuff along this path, and you have a switch here, we're gonna compare something in here, we're gonna do something, and then there's a whole bunch of paths that go from there. So depending on what this condition is and how it's met, we're going to go down a certain path, right? So that's what a switch is, right? So it works kind of like a compare, right? Because in a compare, you run logic down a line, you hit a compare, but then you have true or false. You only have the two paths that you're going to take. A switch, you can have as many as you want, right? So right now, I'm gonna say, okay, we're gonna int variable. What we're looking at for the switch is the select random int, right? So this guy. Let's have 5 switches. Let's compare to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and yeah, and then let's make events. And you can name these events anything. All right, I'm just gonna use. Oh, I should have used 0. It would make more sense there, wouldn't it? 1, 2, 3, and switches are great, especially for things like inventories and dialogue systems and all sorts of stuff. So we're going to go here and we're going to do, say, just a wait. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just going to wait for half a second and finish and go back. And then I'm gonna paste that a few times so that we can see it actually travel these different routes. Now, and this is kind of a tip that for troubleshooting, if you have an integer here, it does something, because these switches don't, well, this one can run every frame, but some of them don't. But anyways, if you run a switch and this result isn't here, it'll fail and it just kind of sits here. Lots of times I'll do a next frame event, and then from here I'll make it run down a default path, right? So in this case, maybe I'll just use a finished. So if it chooses a number that's not in the switch, we're just going to go back. And if I hit play, okay, it chose 1, chose 2, chose 1, chose 3 that time, right? So it's choosing a different number and it's running these different switches, right? And like I said, now if I take this up to some number that's not in the switch, it's going to just, see how it went right back here. It followed this path instead, because it's choosing, okay, now it chose a number, right? So lots of times I'll put something like this as a safety, right? Because I don't want my logic to fail. So that is switches.